The country of Yemen is officially the main battlefield between Iran and the United States, where you have Iran trying to push the United States away from the Middle East to get to Israel, and you have the United States maintaining their composure, trying to keep everything stable in the Middle East, where both of these countries are now clashing in Yemen. As we know, the Houthi fighters out of Yemen, the ones launching munitions out of Yemen to strike civilian vessels, they really are an extension from Iran's military, but here's where things get rather complex. Iran officially has Iranian and Hezbollah commanders assisting and helping the Houthi fighters on the ground in Yemen. This gives the opportunity for the US military to officially go after actual Iranian militants. So here's what's happening. Iran is supplying drones and precision strike missiles to the Houthis. Iran is also providing know-how data and intelligence within the Red Sea. And the Houthis are also being trained on all of this equipment straight from Iran on the ground. Iran has found a loophole in the Middle East where Iran can utilize the Houthis to cause destabilization within the Middle East, but to also now officially strike the US military. Now, before we truly get into all of this, make sure you're at least liking the video or leaving your opinions in the comments. For some reason, a ton of you are not seeing any of my videos, and I don't want you guys to miss any of this because I have dedicated my life to reporting everything that's happening within the Middle East for your entertainment and education. Okay, so like I had stated, now we officially have Iranian militants and Hezbollah militants in Yemen as an advisory role, trying to help the Houthis indicate where they need to attack and what they need to do. But before we talk about that, let us remember that the US military, I don't think, was truly prepared for this to happen. Main reason being is because the US military knew that the Houthis, they know they're backed by Iran, but I don't think anyone saw this coming where the Houthis are so willing and able to fully commit to full-blown strikes against Israel, full-blown strikes against US naval ships, and full-blown strikes against actual civilian vessels with a lot of success. So now the US military finds themselves trying to at least contain the strikes from Yemen, and I also want to give a shout out to other allied partners with the United States, such as Germany, such as the Netherlands, Australia, and a ton others. Oh, and of course the British, I forgot about them. Now, when you look at all of the patterns throughout the Middle East and the military strategies that all of these militant groups that are tied to Iran are doing currently at the time of this video, you can see a pattern throughout everyone. Be very aggressive. Be aggressive. From the country of Iran themselves going after Pakistani territory and Iraqi territory, from Hezbollah upping up their attacks, from the Houthis upping their attacks, and the Islamic resistance of Iraq upping their attacks as well. Iran knows they have a ton of momentum, but the one battle space that we need to focus on is Yemen, because Yemen finds themselves in a very interesting position. Now, what's really special about the country of Yemen and the Houthis is that no one wants to invade that country. Thus, it looks like Iran has found a loophole where they can really be as safe as they're ever going to be in the entire battle space of the Middle East, let alone a small country like Yemen. And of course, Iran is completely going to take advantage of this. Now, the main reason why no country wants to go into Yemen and go after the Houthis, it's not that they can't do it, it's that no one wants to tackle the challenge of the humanitarian disaster that is happening currently. Now, this is a very disgusting topic to talk about because at the end of the day, the people of Yemen are suffering over the Houthis wanting to take world domination to the next level. Unfortunately, the 2023 stat for the humanitarian disaster over Yemen is that 80% of Yemeni people are in need of food, water, electricity, and shelter. That is, again, 80% of an entire country. So understand, if any nation is willing or trying to tackle the challenge of invading Yemen and going after the Houthis, they are also obligated via the international humanitarian laws to take care of the people they are trying to liberate. And we know the US military tried to do this in the countries of Iraq and Afghanistan, but this was becoming extremely problematic, and the enemy militants within Iraq and Afghanistan were taking complete advantage of this and going after US assets, and again trying to destabilize war efforts when the war efforts were trying to help the people. Now, without a doubt, it is absolutely not a surprise that the Houthis get all of their money and supplies directly from Iran. There have been plenty of ships that have been seized. I mean, even recently there was a ship coming from Somalia heading towards Yemen that was captured, and there were munition parts on the ship. But I think the part that people are a little concerned of is how willing in public Iran and Hezbollah are willing to be in Yemen, saying, yes, we are here, and yes, we are helping the Houthis. Typically, Iran acts extremely covert, and also, what is Hezbollah doing all the way from Lebanon down in Yemen? So again, this is really problematic for any countries trying to contain or go after the Houthis, because now a decision needs to be made. Do we use the full efforts of our intelligence agencies to find these commanders on the ground, or how do we tackle this complete issue of trying to contain the Houthis? Do we stay on the defensive? Do we go on the offensive? Or do we go after the head of the snake, Iran? One thing you'll also notice almost in all of the strikes you're seeing from the US military or the British over Yemeni territory is that the US military is being very careful to not actually go after militants on the ground. Most of these strikes are going after the rail systems or the munition sites themselves. Now, again, I am speculating here, but there is a lot of pattern when it comes to the US military. If the US military wanted to, they could absolutely devastate all Houthi targets, but the issue is they're also going to hurt the people of Yemen. And this is what Iran wants, and the US military has talked about this for a while now. Iran wants the US military to bite the trap or go after the trap and accidentally take out a family who has nothing to do with any of this, thus delegitimizing the US military in the Middle East. So you can see how it's very enticing for the US military to go after Iranian generals or a Hezbollah commander in the country, but the US military or the British and other assets, it doesn't look like they're willing to do it yet. The reason why I say the US military is not willing to do this yet is because you have to understand the US government has officially recategorized the Houthis on the terror list. And because of this, this will now officially open up the door for all intelligence agencies or more funding or more time to go after the Houthis themselves and to invest actually finding out where these high-value targets are within Yemen. And you would think that the US military would be heavily focusing on the Houthis, but that's how the government has always focused. If a group of militants are not on a high value watch list or they're not on the terror list, the government or other entities are not going to fully support your campaigns or actions in any military capacity. Another real-world example of this is where the US government has been trying to push the cartel into the terror group so more entities can come in to either fund or more people can come in to either try and stop the cartel from coming into the country. Something else that's massive about Iran also working within Yemeni territory is that Iran is now officially able to help the Houthis directly in attacking civilian vessels that mean more to the United States or Israel than other assets. I think one of the biggest questions has always been, how do the Houthis know who to go after? Are they just randomly going after a ship here or there? It certainly looked like this, but now things are changing. Going after US assets, going specifically after ships that are going directly to Israel. It looks like all of a sudden the Houthis know what they're doing, but now we know this is because Iran is within the battle space helping the Houthis directly. So as I'm making this video, Yemen is almost starting to sound like Vietnam, where there needs to be a justification and cause to continue this conflict within Yemen to go after the Houthis. Obviously, the United States, what they're saying is, we're trying to contain the Houthis, we're trying to defend world trade, but in order to defend, we also have to attack. Now, one thing the Vietnam War proved is that you cannot win a war with an air campaign or constant strikes. And look, it looks like Iran knows this and the Houthis know this. When the United States takes out 2 missiles within Houthi territory, the the Houthis launch 4 more in retaliation. So the constant back and forth of retaliation, it really goes and wins in the favor of the Houthis and Iran. At the end of the day, as long as the Houthis and Iran could keep destabilizing the region and to keep making the US military focus on Yemen to get them away from Israel, the Houthis are doing their job and they're currently winning this fight. And the last thing I really want to end on is this. From the US perspective and the legal perspective, at some point, is this a war or is this just defending ourselves? Because I think the people of the United States and the government of the United States are going to start questioning our actions in the Middle East because this is looking more and more like a war. But as we know, Biden does have the right within a 60 to 90 day period to continue military operations as long as there's a public announcement to Congress or a notification letting everyone know that Biden is instituting his military powers in the Middle East. But after this 60 to 90 day period, the US government has to step in and has to take legal action, and they're either going to approve more military action or they're going to declare war on the Houthis. Now, obviously, the first legal step was to recategorize the Houthis as a terror organization, but anything past that is just a straight-up war. Are you going to all of a sudden be allies with the Houthis? Like, how does that work? In no way, shape, or form will that ever happen. The Houthis refer to themselves as God's army, and they're essentially going to fight until the end of their days, where there will be no more Houthis left on the face of the earth. And so because of that, again, that pins the US military and the government in a position of, are we just going to sit here and make sure the Houthis don't do anything bad, or are we going to instigate or fulfill our duties as a country and go to war? And so this is why Yemen has officially become the main battle space in the Middle East between Iran and the United States. Both countries have found loopholes to use Yemen as a battle space where both of these countries are not necessarily going to direct war with one another, but this is the closest both of these countries want to get with direct action against one another. And again, I stand by this. I really do wish all of this would end because the people of Yemen are truly suffering. And if the US military or the government or anyone wants to use Yemen as a battle space, I would at least hope that the people of Yemen are at least covered and food and supplies will be sent to them. So yeah, that is what's happening in the Middle East. And unfortunately, it looks like it's only getting worse and worse and worse.